Hello, wayward sons of Mother Earth and daughters. Sitting here in the van, sorry Hermione, she doesn't like it when I call her the van. It's a dark and stormy night. The trees are swaying out there in the darkness and the rain. The occasional headlights roll past. And thinking, just ate a pot noodle, feel mildly sick. Oh, wide awake. It's bedtime and I'm wide awake. I shall have to readjust my sleeping pattern over the next couple of days. And I'm sure anyone who grew up had their childhood principally sort of late 70s, early 80s, that kind of time. For me, it's 80s really. Born in 1977, so I can barely remember the 70s. But the early 80s, there was that vibe of there's this new word, hauntology. I think it means just basically sitting on your ass watching TV and movie content from that and related periods with that kind of analog warmth and the strangeness and the freedom as well. A lot of the content from back then was more artistic and more free and more gritty. That lovely feeling you get when you watch Hammer horror and old black and white movies and that kind of thing. It's all, you know what I'm saying. I heard that word hauntology. I can't be bothered to look it up, but I think I got the meaning of that. I remember as a little boy, I have this memory of there's two actually. I want to talk about two. One of them I actually managed to identify as I remember the name Chucky. It's a really weird children's television program about a young boy who kind of makes friends and is kind of possessed by a disembodied intelligence, and they kind of form a relationship. Worth checking out. That very, very strange. And I'm sure I used to have these dreams where there was some kind of resonance going on, some kind of feeling of a chord being struck. And the other one, I have no idea what this TV program is, but right on time there, those red lights going past remind me. There was a young boy who made friends with a young woman who was kind of stuck in time in the darkness in the woods, I think. And they were on top of a hill. I mean, the memory, who knows how accurate the memory is, but I remember them standing on top of a dark hill looking down towards a valley, and these cars would drive past, and the red headlights on the back of the cars, this young girl would say they were the eyes of devils, demons. And the young boy was like, oh no, they're just cars. But she couldn't understand because she was still living in the past. And again, this idea of this resonance taking place between what was then past and what would be the future. Very peculiar. But let's talk about change and evolution and art as well. Whoa. Let's keep it dark, if you don't mind. Let's start with art. Art is prophecy, and if you have the guts to live it, it will aid the transformation process. And that kind of sums it up succinctly. I was wandering around in the darkness across the fields and woodlands last night, like I do sometimes, with an amazing sense of peace in every breath, a feeling of being home and healing. You see, as long as you know where the line is, it's healthy to explore the darkness, to become one with the darkness, for the darkness is the womb of the light. And if you become one with the darkness, then fear leaves you, because you've kind of allied yourself with the with that primal source of fear, if you like. You've stepped into the other realm. You've become one with the subconscious, in a way. We can get all wordy and flowery over that, but it's kind of obvious, really. Obviously, I've talked before about making art and seeing art as prophecy, and that becoming an influence on future events. And so we were going to talk about art, which we have briefly. I became a walking work of art last night, like I have before on many occasions, and will again in the future. You see, when you're trying to connect, when you have when you're trying to connect with your higher genius and allow conversation, and for that to produce further works of art / literature, it's something you have to step into. That you have to be brave and understand that it comes at a price, but that price is worth paying. Authenticity has its own rewards. So, leading on from art, let's talk about evolution in terms of consistent daily practice. Now, few people are ever 100% consistent. We're all human, we all have a bad day here and there, and it's all part of the trials and tribulations. But one should strive and punish oneself, and faith and humility go a long way. Developing the capacity within the soul, becoming harmonious with one's fellow man as far as is possible, because in the same way that darkness in Binar and the combativeness within Gabura, they're on the tree. It's unavoidable. They have to be integrated. But you don't want to be living there in every moment, because that can be stressful, right? You need to share yourself out. But we're all going to have our own natural resonances, so we're going to find ourselves wanting to explore certain archetypes more than others in order to create balance and healing. And I can say I first began daily meditation practice, it must have been 2014. Things really began ramping up winter solstice 2012, in terms of a kind of personal, what you might call the microcosm of the magical revival personally. I know that phrase is used to communicate a renewed interest in the way that it's kind of compared with the 70s. They talk about the 70s being a time where people were really interested in that kind of thing, and it goes around in cycles and circles. But if you're that kind of a person, it's it's going to happen anyway. So it just so happens that we find ourselves in a time where, because of the internet and a lot of dissatisfaction and alienation and isolation, and we're losing faith in ideologies and leaders and systems of government and all that kind of thing. And we should, because it's evident, isn't it, in its fruits, but you see, if you're that kind of person that is drawn to the occult arts and the process of introspection and daily practice and communion with divinity, then that's going to happen anyway, right? So in terms of changes, personally, it's been the last sort of 3 or 4 months whereby through joining a school and being under the auspice of an amazing teacher and a wonderful group of people, whereby that feeling of community lifts you up and propels you within your own individuality. It's a lot easier that way, and there were new concepts which were presented to me. This idea of personal evolution and elemental balancing. Also the notion of vital force or chi, fifth element, etc. The terminology. Sometimes you just have to pick, a line of inquiry and just go with that, right? Or we'll be here forever. So I can say after just a few months that this process of balancing and internal evolution and a sense of energetic enhancement is a very real thing. Waking up in the morning, going through certain rituals and procedures and directing your mind a certain way, and not being able to escape within that. Part of the process is confronting and dealing with every aspect of life, getting better at everything, standing up straight, seeing things for what they really are. And as I've stated before, we're all human, so we're not going to be brilliant at this every day, but we're trying, we're striving, and we're lifting each other up within this process. You're going to find a lot of things, that seemed ultra personal to you. You're going to see them reflected in other people. You're going to realize that you weren't as isolated as you had previously believed. The danger of all this is going a bit loopy. Now, I've seen this. When it comes to the internet, people spend their whole day on Facebook brain farting, basically, because instead of applying the training and the philosophy directly within themselves, they're cosplaying and role-playing this process on Facebook, on the internet. As long as they feel that they're presenting an image, it's like a displacement and a replacement for the actual process itself. So that's something very important to be conscious of, and we all do that a little bit from time to time. And if you realize that, you're probably going to be okay. But if you don't realize that, yeah, you're not, obviously. It's a given, right? So I can say that, performing these rituals and exercises and daily asanas in order to cultivate an inner energy and balancing process, it's really shocked me how real that is. And development is a very, very slow and sometimes painful and sometimes exhilarating process with its ups and its downs. And there's a tendency to want to get everything right and be good all the time. And I feel that the real victory is not being the person that gets everything right all the time, but being the person that when things do go wrong, you're able to pick yourself up again and say, okay, I'm learning. And if you make that mistake again and again and again, if you can just keep getting up, getting yourself back on track. Oh, I had a bad day here, or oh, I forgot this, or oh, get the pen and paper out, write this down, dear. There's no point in me going into like techniques and that kind of thing, because I'm a guy who's just learning and developing myself, and it wouldn't be my place to try and relay this kind of thing specifically, or to it's very important not to as Mr. Bardon states, I'm sort of paraphrasing, that you don't you don't talk about your own development exactly in terms of where you at least perceive yourself to be. It's best to keep that private, really, and within the group, and even private within the group. Very, very. This is where you kind of struggle and hesitate a little bit. Is a very, because you're going to have to just make decisions here and there, and they're not all going to be right, and you're going to keep learning as long as you can just keep picking yourself back up. And then every now and then you're going to have a day where you're going to be knocked out by the reality of this art, and synchronicities are going to fall into place, and doors might open for you, others might close. But the really shocking thing when it comes to development, and I'm going to start off with something quite dark here, and that is see, if nothing's changed inside, then I'm talking bollocks, right? But things have changed. Because of the whole 2020 thing, it's been an amazing opportunity for personal growth in adversity, within adversity and loss. So there's things I wanted to do, people I wanted to see, ways in which I wanted to just live in a fantasy, and they were all either crushed slowly or suffocated. They just died, and as they were dying, they were just giving out that last kick as the heart was aching. And it's a very difficult thing to understand yourself as a human being with so many wants and needs and fantasies playing out, and in that silence and that peace of meditation, in that state of observation, to see the truth of all these processes going on, and realizing that there's a lot of merit in this sort of Shakespearean quote, to be or not to be, that is the question, you see, because life is so very complex. And if you're able to step outside of yourself and see all these processes going on, and realize that there's a duality in terms of them being valid because you are going through them, and there's nothing wrong with being human for the most part, whilst at the same time you are wanting to elevate yourself. It's like you have to play a little game. It's like I'm in observation of everything that's going on within me, at the same time that I'm still caught up in it, because I can't just escape the world. So I'm going to have to pursue certain lines of fate and drama and needs, and I'm going to have to make certain choices and roll with them. So you ask yourself, so the question is raised, to be or not to be, as you look at every aspect within yourself from that objective stance. You're going to have to go into some of them subjectively and see them through. And the same thing could be applied to the training, actually. You know, I mean, you can't know everything about your teacher or your tradition, and you're gonna, I mean, to put it this way, like, you have to take certain things on faith. There's a certain humility in that. And because of the modern age, it's like there's this attitude of super individualism where it's like, I'm an individual and I'm not going to let anyone tell me what to do, and I'm not going to kneel before any system. This is not good. You have to have a certain amount of faith and humility, whereby that process is grounded in the stability of looking at the results of the system / person that you are learning from. In other words, you know, look at the fruits. If the system / person that you are aligning yourself with, you know, if there's evidence of success, if you can see, you know, certain properties that you wish to emulate, if there's a feeling of goodness and truth there, then you can ally yourself to that process and let go a little bit and have a little bit of faith and a little bit of humility, and, you know, perhaps say to yourself, you know, maybe I haven't got all the answers. You know, do you really think someone walking around with their glued to their phone all day, you know, all caught up in the games and the machinations of modern life, have they got all the answers? Are they, no one's going to tell me what to do? No, they're lost. You know, so you start by admitting that you are at least partially lost, and saying, okay, I will apply myself to this discipline that hopefully the decision to partake in was at least grounded in the intellect and the evidence that one could judge as being fruitful. See, there's a lot of living in the past, isn't there? Now, when people watch movies, oh bloody hell, that wind's really picking up. When people watch movies, they have a little fantasy, don't they? Oh, how brilliant it would be to serve with a master, I don't know, some kung fu master, or imagine what it would be like. You watch that movie, you know, the Gurdjieff movie, where they're all performing those rituals, and, you know, how cool it would be to have a guru. But you see, the modern sensibility, when actually confronted with these ideas in a modern context, is very suspicious, and quite rightly so. Yet at the same time, you might want to look at it from the other side as well. Everything is duality. A crown of thorns is still a crown. So don't get caught up in the way society may perceive success and fulfillment, or you'll be chasing that ghost until your last dying breath. Now, if I take my own situation, I chose to become, you know, in inverted commas, a wandering nomad in pursuit of a spiritual life. Now, by society's standards, I'm a failure. I am someone who has been driven out, homeless, I don't have the necessary physical possessions and means at my disposal to be deemed a successful man. I artistically, spiritually, I've been creative. I have something to say. I have good friends, especially recently, and more than that, obviously, when we think about the things that really matter, all of those things are in place. You see, for a long time after my divorce, now this brings us back to personal evolution and changes. Even though I didn't quite realize I was doing it, I now know that subconsciously I was trying to play a certain role in order to procure a certain type of partner that would make me feel content, etc., etc. Like I said, all of that was suffocated across this 2020 period, and I wasn't able to have what I wanted, and I was protesting inside and emotional, and until eventually it all just died in the darkness. Now, I'm not saying I don't have some of those feelings kicking around in me, or that they don't resurrect from time to time if I look at a certain picture, but I can say that when you've confronted what you at least perceive to be truth, and you've tasted a little bit of that eternal treasure, it's very difficult to go back and compare what you thought you wanted with this sense of it's very difficult to put this into words because it's kind of on the edge of my consciousness. If we had this process of the philosopher's stone, if you like, congealing, consolidating, and there was a decision to follow a certain route and to understand what was true. Within that process, things are dying off, and there's something new being birthed, a new connection and a sense of faith. And when you've seen a certain light in someone's eyes and tasted that even for a few seconds, it's very difficult to go back to the past and try and kid yourself about what you think would be fulfilling. It's hard because you want to stay in that fantasy realm, but you can't. It's gone. It's dead. And in the darkness, in the night, becoming one with the shadows, in that womb of death and darkness, we see the light.